Welcome to America's Job Center resume and interview training video. What is a resume? The purpose of a resume is to provide a summary of your skills, abilities, and accomplishments. It's a quick advertisement of who you are. It's a snapshot of you and your personal marketing tool used to promote yourself to employers that are hiring. So some resume topics. We have our standard resume sections, chronological resume, functional resume, a resume checklist, resume styling, and what not to include in your resume. In the standard resume sections, we have our header, which includes name, city, state, phone, and email, an objective or summary statement, so what type of work you are seeking, or maybe an overall summary of who you are as an employee. Skills and abilities, so here you're going to select skills to highlight going towards that position you are seeking. Work experience, the history of your jobs, education, relevant study or courses. A chronological resume starts by listing your work history in reverse order, with the most recent position listed first. It is the format recruiters and employers like the most, and is especially good for job seekers who wish to stay in the same line of work and at the same level of employment, especially if your work history shows continuous progression. Here's an example of a chronological resume. Here at the top, you're going to see your name and the ways you can be contacted, email address, and phone number. You will notice that there is no physical address. On previous resumes and styles, a candidate would typically put their entire address, including city and state. What we have been noticing is now that we're able to seek employment online and post our resumes and give them to either hiring or talent recruitments, and they share that information. A lot of times, candidates and even employers just want the city and the state that you're in to keep yourself protected and also not to put your home address out there. If you do not prefer to put your location, that is totally okay. But definitely make sure name and ways to contact you are listed. And the next box here, we have a summary or objective statement. An organized and friendly sales associate with 3+ years of success, experience working with retail stores and customers. A summary, you want to combine your years of experience. So instead of saying 1 year in retail store, 2 years with customer service, you combine them all. And the reason you do that is to, 1, keep your summary clear and concise. 2, your experience goes all the way back from when your job first started. Even if you jumped employment or have 3, it doesn't matter. Customer service is a great example because it transcends most positions and roles. So that is why we have in this example 3+ years. And that is just on customer service. If you're a labor worker and you've done seasonal work out in ag, then you want to combine those. Even if you did it over different summers or in between, you still have that relevant experience. Add them up. You'd be surprised how much experience you really do have. A summary or objective statement also gives the employer a sight of where your focus is at, what your vision for this employment is, your intention behind it. In the experience section, again for chronological, you're going to start with the most recent and then go backwards. You do not want to exceed 10 years of experience. There's a couple of reasons for that. 1, you want your resume to be typically 1 page long, but also you do not want to give away to an employer that you may be beyond 10+ years of work history and beyond. So if somebody puts 20 years experience, depending on the employer, and I know it's hard, they can age discriminate. So we do this by keeping it relevant amount, keeping it age appropriate, And then also at the same time, you want relevant experience. What you did when you were, 5, 10 years ago is still relevant. But if something that you've done 15, 20 years ago may not be relevant. Now, if you've been in a position for 20 years, that's a little different. Your experience may only be that one job, but with multiple experience and promotions within it. And that would be something different. For your education, you're going to have the school, the degree you have, and the year you graduated. Or if you're still in progress, you're going to put in progress for your degree or expected graduation date. You can put that you have your high school diploma or your GED. Typically, you don't want to date the year you graduated from high school, only because, again, it could lead to age discrimination. So all we're doing is letting the employer know that you have your education or you're getting your education, and keep it relevant. Skills. Here's where you really want to put those skills that you're great at. The other thing is, depending on what position you're applying for, you want to mirror some of those skills with what you are seeing in that job description that they have highlighted. And there's a couple reasons for that. You're showing the employer that you have those skills and highlighting them. 2, for computer algorithm, it sometimes picks up on those keywords and it may automatically pull your resume up. So there is a science behind this, and there's also a reason to highlight yourself. For these skills, you know how to highlight that you're either very productive, you're proficient at something, or maybe that you're a self-starter or you're great at communication. If you're not sure what kind of skills that you have, take a look back at your previous job description of what you did or what you're currently doing, and look in there and see what you have. And think about what you do day to day that you feel comfortable with. The last thing on a resume, you don't want to list your references. You want to keep this space as much possible for your experience and your skills and highlighting your summary. So references you can put on a separate page, and all you have to put is upon request, they can have those references. Or in most times for the job applications, you may have to fill it out before you attach your resume. Let's talk functional resume. This works better if you're making a career change, especially to a different field or to a higher level of responsibility, or if you have limited or no experience relevant to the job you're applying for. The functional resume focuses on your skills and qualifications rather than your chronological work history. A functional resume could highlight your strengths more effectively depending on where you're at in your career. In this example, the top is still the same, your name and the way that they can contact you. You will also have a summary or objective statement here. And for your area of expertise, you will see that this has changed. So it's highlighting the position that you were at, and then of course, the work that you did under those positions. So you'll see here farm worker, and you'll see landscaping. And each of those is highlighting, just like your skills, what you did in that position and what you're really good at in that position. Underneath the area expertise, you have your work history. This is where you would put what you did, the company, where, and when you worked it. You will see here, because this example is for farming, sometimes you have seasonal positions. So you list it summer and then the year. You can do that a couple of times if you need to, as long as you put that you have those work histories. But what this resume does is it's showing that you have area expertise. Even if you're going into, again, a higher level, so it looks like this one is trying to go into management from their position. If you have limited experience, but let's say you've done a lot of seasonal work and you are very good at what you do, you can highlight your skills a lot better. This resume is all about focusing on what you do and not so much when and where you worked. And of course, at the bottom here, your education. So again, what your degree is, where you got it, and when you graduated, or expected to graduate and in progress. Let's talk about our checklist. When we are creating our resume, chronological or functional, we need to ensure that there's no spelling or grammatical errors. It needs to be neat, clean, and professional looking, and the length should be 1 to 2 pages. Margins at the sides and the bottom should be evenly spaced. Most documents, when you do open them up on a computer, their default is 1-inch margins all the way around. Your font size should be between 10 to 12 points. Anything below that, it's going to be too hard to read. Anything above that, and you're either not going to get all the information on, or it's just not going to look right. Important titles should be emphasized, and format should be professional and very easy to read. When we talk about the styling, experiment with some of the fonts and styles to spotlight bold, italic, or underlying. So typically, if it is your role or company, maybe you want it in bold or you want it in underline. Now don't get crazy and do a bunch of them. Keep them uniformed and clean. Again, if you're going to use bold for one position, you want to use it for the other. And then of course, bullet points, you want to use those or certain type of fonts. Now when you do create your resume and you are starting to experiment with the styles and fonts, that kind of gives a little bit of style of who you are and how you want it to look. And you can always seek feedback on your resume and have somebody else look at it, give it a different perspective. What you don't want to include on your resume is a photograph of yourself. Unless you're in the modeling agency and they specifically request that you have a photo, that's something separate in a portfolio. But for the most part in a resume, you don't usually include that. You don't want to put salary history or requirements for your salary on a resume. For high school activities, unless it applies to the job and they've asked for it, again, you don't want to put those on there. List of references. So as I mentioned before, you want to utilize your space for the resume and your skills. You don't want to put those on there. And then any basis for discrimination: age, religion, race, gender, marital status, national origin, or disabilities. Employers may consider your injury to be a liability, but under the protections of Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1998, persons with disabilities have no obligation to disclose their disability prior to receiving a job offer. Most of the time, the best way is give them who you are as an employee and your skills and your value, and remove anything that has to do with personalization necessarily on a personal level. You can get to that once you get into the job and you start talking to the employer and they start to get to know you. But when it comes to them hiring you, it should solely be based on who you are as a worker and your skills you can bring to that company. Now that we've gone over the different resume styles, let's talk about interviewing, the next stage in the process of getting hired. Interviewing gives an employer a better idea of what a job candidate is capable of doing above and beyond what is explained in their resume. It also gives the employer a chance to meet the candidates, where they can assess their personalities, character, and level of professionalism. Interview topics. So we're going to go over types of interviews, parts of an interview, preparing for an interview, dressing for it, interview tips, questions you may experience, how to say it, what to include and exclude, and then going out and closing the interview. Lastly, a follow-up, a call, a letter, or an email. The types of interviews out there that you may experience: the first one is an informational interview. This is a meeting to learn about the real-life experience of someone working in a field or company that interests you. This could be going into the business and talking to the manager about the positions they have available, or just seeing what it's like in their day-to-day. If you know somebody that works at the company you're going for, you may talk to them and see what that company is like or what those positions are like. A telephone or video interview is the initial interview conducted over the phone or a screen device before an official interview. This is more common nowadays, where they want to talk first and kind of get preliminaries or pre-screening questions out of the way. It's kind of the first phase to see how you are, or even if you are fully interested in continuing in this process of hiring. The screening interviews is to ensure that the prospect candidate meets the qualifications for the position. Some companies do use a pre-screening company, or they have their talent manager call first to ensure that you have either the education requirements, maybe the skills, qualifications, or years experience before you can move forward with a full interview. Selection interviews is an interview to determine whether a candidate will be selected for the position, as the company is trying to decide whether or not you should either be moved to the next step in the hiring process or an offer is going to be extended. Now, this is the big one when it comes to the interviews. This is when you can be sat down, you come in person, or it may be another video conference. Like I said, it's becoming more common nowadays. And this is where you have the full-blown questions and when you really dive into who you are as a potential employee. In those interviews, you may be faced with panel interviews. This is conducted by more than one interview at the same time. That means you may be talking to 4 of the managers. You could have somebody from the department you're going to work in. You could have the hiring manager or a district manager there. You could have somebody from the team that's there with a supervisor and then another decision maker. These interviews can be very nervous. Now, types of interview. You may be faced with a panel interview. An interview that is conducted by more than one interview at the same time. This can be nerve-wracking, as you are one person sitting in front of 2, 3, maybe 4 people. And those people may vary in position. You may have a supervisor and a manager there. You may have a district manager there, along with maybe another team member. The goal of this type of interview is to give each person eye contact to make them included in your interview. Group interviews is an interview that is conducted with 2 or more candidates in a group setting. This can be done before, let's say, a panel interview or before a one-on-one interview. And what they like to see in this type of interview is how you stand out in a group or how you guys build upon each other as a team in a group. Behavioral interviews is an interview that is geared towards uncovering how a candidate can deal with conflicts, stressful situation, problem-solving abilities, and team interaction. This can be done in a couple ways. For some employers, they may have a mock style interview where you go in and you reenact a situation. They will throw some curveballs at you and see how you respond or how you deal with it. The other thing is behavioral styled questions. Can you tell me a time when, or if you and an employee got in a disagreement, how would you? And based on your responses, they'll determine what you are as far as management style, team style, what your problem-solving ability is like. So regardless of the interview that you're in, there are definitely stages and parts of this interview. The first impression is made during the initial 7 seconds of a meeting with someone new. So plan to make a good first impression. Whether that's over the phone, in a video chat, in a group setting or in a panel setting. As soon as you see that person, you want to make that first impression. It may be a little hard over the phone, but if you smile and act like they're in front of you and you just have that upbeat feeling, they're going to hear it over the phone. And that's how you make a good impression over the phone. With a camera, it's going to be the same thing as in a person-to-person setting. You still want to smile and make eye contact as best you can, so stare directly at the camera, not the window of your face. In person, it's going to be just as before. A handshake, a smile, great eye contact, open body language. In the opening act of an interview, answer questions effectively and with confidence in your skills and abilities. It may be a little hard to answer these questions. Interviews can be very nerve-wracking, but what you have to remember is that they're asking what you do as an employee. It's nothing new. You're just explaining them what you are able to do, and nobody's going to know better than you. So have some confidence in what you do as an employee. If you know you're great at customer service, all you're doing is explaining to them why. If you're great at being a supervisor, all you have to do is tell them what you do with your team and why you care so much as a team leader. The information exchange. This builds upon the opening act. You're going to explain how your skills and experience would fit in their position. So take it further. You know that you're great at customer service, for example. So your years of experience, how would that fit in their position? If they're looking for somebody to be at the front desk, the first face people see, you would explain how your experience in making customers happy and what you do to go beyond for them is a perfect fit for their company. After you've explained your skills and abilities and how they're going to fit with the company, it's your turn. The reverse interview. So you need to ask questions to show your interest in their business. This is a time for you to understand the company more, not necessarily to interrogate the employers or try to get information on if they like you. This is your chance to see, is this company right for you? What is their mission? What are their values? And after you ask those questions and you get an understanding of their business and they see that you're interested, you'll of course close up the interview and thank them for their time. Always thank them for taking their time out to speak with you. They chose you to bring you in and they wanted to spend time to get to know you. Now, before we even get to the interview, we have to talk about preparing for it. Luck favors the prepared, right? And the only way to do that, well, is to get everything together beforehand. Prepare your resume and a list of references. So before we get to the interview, and we get worked up before that, so before we even get to the interview part, let's talk about preparing for it. You'll want to have copies of your resume and list of references with you. The reason for this is that you may have spoken to only the HR manager or supervisor at the time, and they're bringing you in. But in a panel interview, they may have had others come in to interview you, so they may not have seen your resume. They may not have seen your list of references. It's always best to have it and offer if they would like a copy of your resume, or give it to them as soon as you walk in. You're going to want to plan your interview outfit and dress appropriately. Do not add the stress of trying to pick out your outfit the day before or day of. And the reason for that is we may not always have appropriate dress attire or a suit and a tie or a dress. So we may put it on and we may not feel it's right, or the fit may have changed. So go out before, Try your outfit to see if you like it. If you don't, go find an interview outfit that you're comfortable with. If you don't do that and you do it the day before, the day of, you're going to add more stress and you won't be able to relax and calm down and get your thoughts together before the interview. So remove that stress. It's something that you can control out of the way beforehand. You want to know their business. Research the company beforehand. And you should do this as you're applying for the jobs. You want to know if this company is right for you. You want to know what they do and get to know a little bit more about your job. So not only do you look at the job description and see if it matches with you, go do an informal interview. Go inside and talk to the employees and see, do they like this company? Is it great? What do they do in their day-to-day? Prepare questions to ask about the position or employer. So in our stages of interviews, it's the reverse interview. So what are you going to ask the employer? What do you want to know more about the position? Have those questions ready to go so you're not looking at them trying to think of questions in the moment. You also want to prepare a work portfolio. So in your history of work, do you have letters of recommendation? Do you have further detail on your work that you can bring in? Depending on the type of work, do they need more info with you? If you're in marketing, for example, maybe you do want to bring in flyers that you've created or artwork that you've done. If you're going into modeling, maybe that you do need to bring in portfolios of your past work or maybe what you're doing now. So I talked about before of going to get your dress beforehand. It's important to dress appropriately for an interview because the employer will be judging you based on your level of professionalism and your ability to fit within their company. Plan ahead and prepare your outfit for the interview that might lead to your next job opportunity. So we're going to break it down. For women, you can typically choose between a skirt or a blouse or dress with a blazer type jacket. You want to wear low to medium heels or pumps, or if you do choose to wear flats and heels aren't your things, make sure that they're closed-toed. If you are wearing a skirt, stockings or nylons, very simple jewelry, hairstyle, and makeup. And that's for typical everyday. Now I will say not all companies are the same, and what they expect from their potential candidates aren't always the same. You'll see here for an industrial workplace, slacks and a blouse are totally acceptable. Low-heeled shoes, little to no jewelry. For men, dress shirt and slacks, tie, belt, and dress shoes with matching socks. Now, I will add a little caveat to this. Your belt and your shoes should match. If you have black shoes, you should wear a black belt. If you have a brown belt, you should wear brown shoes. Just trust me on this one. And a suit or sport coat are optional. Here in the example for an industrial workplace, a washable two-piece work uniform, gray, green, or blue, trousers or jeans, and a plain shirt. Again, I can't emphasize enough, this is why researching a company is going to help you. It's going to help you find what you need to wear for this interview. It's going to show the employer that you've researched it or that you're familiar with that industry. And then also when you are picking out your interview clothing, you're prepared beforehand. Here are some examples of appropriate attire. So you'll see, like we discussed, slacks, blouses, and a jacket. Inappropriate attire. You do not want to wear tennis shoes or clogs or sandals, no mini skirts, no see-through clothing, no tank tops or t-shirts, hats or caps. You also want to make sure, and this one's kind of hard, is tattoos showing, extreme hair colors, or body piercings. The reason for this is you don't know necessarily what the company accepts in policy. So it's best to kind of change that up or hide them until you know. You may see employees in the store that may have body piercings or extreme hair color, but depending on the position that you're in, that may be acceptable for their position, but maybe not the position you're applying for. So it's better to stay safe and hide those until you know. And you can talk to the employer about it too. Maybe that is a question. What is your policy and stance when it comes to my tattoo showing, or maybe my hair color? And you can always let the employer know you're more than able to respect and hide them or change your hair color if needed for a position. So here's some examples of inappropriate attire. You don't want anything too tight, no leggings, clothes should be fitted, no designs on them, and of course, as you can see, tattoos covered until you know. A work portfolio, so some things that you can have in here, additional copies of your resume, a master application with completed information, your list of references, letters of recommendation, certificates or evidence of your accomplishments. So that could be your typing certificate. Depending on the company you're going for, maybe you need your forklift certification or OSHA. Business cards if appropriate, and always have a pen with black ink and a notepad. Some interview tips for you. Over 85% of getting hired is due to being likable. This is when you shine in your interview, over the phone, in person, or video. Be personable, be likable. Employers prefer to hire character and trained skill. Sometimes it's not always a bad thing to have minimal experience, especially if an employer is willing to train. But if you're in good character and you are very likable, they're gonna want to keep you part of your environment. You're teachable at that point. Definitely do some research about the position and company. As we talked before, you're going to want to know if that company fits with not only your values, but what you're hoping to accomplish in your career. And then, of course, when it comes to dressing appropriately, do you need to wear slacks and a button-up shirt? Or do you need to wear jeans and a nice button-up shirt? Whatever you do, do not lie on applications, resumes, or in the interview. Be early and prepared, and be professional. When you do show up for an interview, you want to be anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes early, just in case you have to sign in, or maybe you have to go through a security check beforehand. And it's also nice to kind of get there and relax a little bit and get your head focused in. Promote yourself like you're selling a product. These are your skills. This is what you can do. Just sell it to them. Talk to them about who you are. Put on a happy face. Smiling puts you and the interviewer at ease. Let's talk about questions to expect. Most common one is, tell me about yourself. Now with this question, you are only telling them about yourself in a professional manner. Not that you have 3 dogs or 2 cats and what their names of the cats are. Just who you are as an employee. What qualifies you for this position? What skills and abilities do you have? What certifications do you have that make you ideal for this candidate? A question that may be uneasy to explain is, why did you leave your last job? And the reason this could be uneasy is maybe you did get fired. Maybe there was layoffs. Or at the time, maybe you chose to start a family. Whatever the reason is, the employers will understand. There's not much you can do as far as things happen in life. But what you let them know is that you are ready to work again, and you're going to put forth 100% like you did in your previous jobs. The dreamer question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? This helps if you've researched the company. Maybe you know already where your promotion path leads you. You can let them know that in 5 years, you hope to be training your own team, maybe instead of seasonal, to be full-time. And then what are your weaknesses? Nobody does not have a weakness. There's a weakness of some sort. So if you say, I don't have any weaknesses, the employer is not going to believe you. This one you want to think about. Is there something you struggle with? And what are you doing to overcome that struggle? That shows progress and that you are willing to work to get better. It's not a bad question. It's actually a really good question and one that you want them to ask because it lets them know that you are working hard at developing yourself. And then lastly, another selling question. Why should I hire you over another qualified candidate? So this could go into skills and abilities, but maybe this is a little bit more of who you are as an employee, personalized. Are you a compassionate employee? Are you a quick learner? What have you done to go above and beyond in your work that you want to bring to that employer? Some illegal questions. It is illegal for employers to ask you questions during an interview about any of the following: medical conditions, race, gender, family care. They can't ask any of those. And if they do ask them, you as an interviewee can ask them politely to, not ask questions like that, or you can redirect the question if need be. If you feel an employer is going out of their way to ask multiple illegal questions, then you have to decide for yourself if that is a company you want to work for, or if maybe at another time you can do an interview with them again, and you can dismiss yourself or ask that you move on. How you say it. Often it is how you say your answer more than what you say. Do you use the word try in an interview? The reason we bring this up is that a hiring manager cannot trust someone who merely will try to get something done. So don't say, I will try. Say, I will do. Do you deliver long-winded answers to questions? If you do, or your storytelling goes beyond, practice cutting the clutter from your answers. By taking out more of the meaningless words, you will make your statement stronger and will better communicate what you are truly trying to express about yourself to the employer. That's why we say when you answer these questions, you want to be clear and concise. Does your love of your work come across in the interview? Showing passion for your work will help you stand out. There's nothing wrong with saying, I pour myself into a job I'm passionate about. They want that from an employee. They want somebody to dive into their work. What to include as well in your interview? Make sure you talk about your goals. Talk about your growth. Again, you want those employers to ask you about weaknesses that you have or that you did have. It gives you a chance to talk about that growth. You also want to highlight what you've done and what you've accomplished. Talk about how motivated you are to move forward or to get this job. Be enthusiastic about what you do and how you're going to move forward. And then interest. Why you have an interest in this company or why you're interested in the position that you're applying for. Things you want to exclude from the interview. You don't want to talk about your life choices, politics, religion, family plans, name dropping, health history, household problems, nanny issues, bosses from hell, and rehab trips. Again, the interview should just be who you are at a professional level. Things going on beyond and outside of that is for a different time and discussion. The reason, again, you want to exclude these is to not give the employer any opportunity to discriminate or take away from who you are as an employee. You may be a fantastic candidate and overly qualified, but bringing up one of these could turn the employer off and say, pass. For asking your questions, when an employer asks, do you have any questions for me? Never tell them no. Asking questions lets the employer know that you are truly interested in working for their company. This is the last opportunity to get your answers. Ask questions that'll let you know what the company is looking for and hiring for their positions. Some good questions. Can you tell me more about the position and the duties that will be expected? Can you explain what type of person you're seeking for? Have I answered all your questions thoroughly? Is there anything else you would like to know? How soon will a decision be made? And what are the next steps from here? When you're closing out the interview, you want to reinforce the positive. Make a positive closing statement, highlighting why you're the best candidate for the job. Emphasize your interest in the position and company without sounding desperate or over the top. And again, thank the interview for spending time with you and give them a handshake and make confident eye contact. Salary negotiations. This should only be done once you've been offered the position. Do your research, know your limits, find out what range the position may pay within before discussing. Display and discuss your talents and exceptional work history. Negotiate your salary with confidence. Some tips and warnings. Share your past salary if that's what you hope to make again. Do not lose your new job opportunity for being too difficult during negotiations. So the reason we don't typically put how much you make on your resume or in the application is that an employer will pay you what you're asking for at the bare minimum. So if an entry range is $15 an hour and you put that you'll work $15 an hour, they'll pay you at $15 an hour instead of potentially a mid or top tier. If your talents and work history show that you are more valuable, instead of coming in at the entry position, you can negotiate an additional 5% or maybe the top tier. It all depends on how you're going to negotiate that you are worth that cost. To put on applications, you either put fair market value or you leave it not available at the time until you get that offered and you can start negotiating where you're at. Follow up after an interview. Now that the interview is over and you've done your best, you should follow up with the employer to let them know about your level of interest for the position. Send a brief letter or email reiterating your skills and experience and anything else about yourself that you would like to highlight that may give you an edge over the competition. You want to do this typically within 2 days of your interview. 75% of interviewers confirm that thank you notes impact their decision process. Again, because it's showing that you are very interested and you're invested in this interview and hiring process. Make a follow-up call 2 or more days after the interview to check in with the interviewer and the status of the hiring decision. Now that we've talked about closing up the interview, we are at the end of our video. I know we went over a lot as far as resume styles, what to include, how they look, interview tips, what to do, what the parts of an interview are. It can be a lot of information, but know that this is all about you on a professional level. All you're doing is highlighting who you are and talking about how awesome you are at your job or how awesome you will be getting into this position. Again, if you ever need further advice or want somebody to review your resume or talk more about how to get prepared for it, you can always contact America's Job Center for further support from the team. For more information and support and activities that we offer, you can go to americasjobcenterofkern.com or you can call us at 325-HIRE. Thank you guys for watching and good luck on your future endeavors.